Hi there, this is John Wilkinson from History Made Easier with a presentation on the Eastern Bloc topic that covers the 5 focus points of the topic from the syllabus, but will also place them in context and will also provide you with key questions in order to help direct your revision on Russia's control over Eastern Europe. Now you should have a good understanding of the fundamental flaws, economic and political, that had always been present in both the Soviet Union and across the Eastern Bloc. The economies of Eastern Europe, just as the Soviet Union's economy, had failed to provide the standard of living most people enjoyed in the West. This was seen in the shops, from food to televisions, and in healthcare and other social provisions. Whilst in Eastern Europe there was the extra burden that economies were geared more for the benefit of the Soviet Union than for themselves. People also felt oppressed. Freedom denied them. The media was controlled, and the police supported by secret police. The army was used whenever needed too, and every state or social institution was headed by proven Communist Party loyalists, and they would be loyal to the Soviet Union too, or else they would be got rid of. Any sign of opposition was crushed. These fundamental flaws can be used in a why question, and in many a past question C, and may be appropriate for a paragraph or two in a question you might face in your exam. So do give it attention in your revision. If you want more on this, I actually have a video on my channel called Problems at the Heart of the Soviet System, so check it out. Now, there are 3 particular crises on your syllabus that the Soviet Union responded to. Hungary in 1956, the Berlin Wall in 1961, and Czechoslovakia in 1968. You could have a specific question on any one of the crises, and you could have a question involving 2 of them, or all 3. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a comparison question, but do prepare for that. It could, for example, be a question asking you why there were so many crises. But on comparisons, I have another YouTube video called 6 Key Factors to the Crises in the Eastern Bloc, which I think will give you some really useful points to make. The notes framework I suggest in my ebook for each of the crises suggests you split your analysis in order to answer 7 key questions. What happened? Why? How did the Soviet Union react? Why did the Soviet Union react the way it did? How serious was the crisis? What was its outcome? And what were its consequences? You can then use your notes to set out another framework that highlights differences and similarities between the 3 crises. And that should cover you for any question you might face in your exam on the 3 crises. But don't forget that context is always important when considering why something happened. And when you're thinking of consequences, as well as looking at the immediate consequences to Hungary, Germany or Czechoslovakia, think about relations with the West and how these crises affected the Cold War. And although the Eastern Bloc would hold together until the end of the 1980s, also think about the ways in which these crises showed the bloc was always under pressure, and the reasons for that. But of course there was another crisis that wasn't dealt with particularly well. Solidarity in Poland. Solidarity really was the beginning of the end. And here I use a different set of questions for my notes framework. What was solidarity, and what did it become? Because it did change in character. Why was solidarity formed? How did it change things in Poland? Why was the Polish government unable to suppress it? And what was the impact of solidarity outside of Poland? Each of these questions is critically important. But again, get your notes under these headings, and I think you'll have any question you might face covered. Gorbachev comes along with the Soviet Union already in a mess. And you have to be clear that Gorbachev was a communist and set out to save the Soviet Union. Reform it, yes, but not destroy it. But he lost control. And it's with this in mind that you must view perestroika, with glasnost initiated as a means to bypass opposition within the party in order to ensure perestroika could happen. So be prepared to explain perestroika and why Gorbachev thought it was necessary, and the same for glasnost. Also be clear about why the Conservatives within the party reacted the way they did. As for what happened in Eastern Europe, be ready with an outline of what happened, and I would use Germany for more specific detail. It was always the centre of the Cold War, from Yalta to Berliners clambering onto the Berlin Wall. But be clear about why people felt so emboldened too. Gorbachev had made clear that this time the Soviet Union would not intervene to prop up unpopular regimes. And you will need to know what unfolded in the Soviet Union too. The attempted coup and its aftermath that ended with Boris Yeltsin leading the newly formed Russian Federation and declaring that the Soviet Union would be replaced by a Commonwealth of independent states. So, lots for you to think about, but not too much, I hope. And I hope I've given you some directions that will help lift the quality of your work to that A star that I'm sure you're aiming for. Good luck with your revision and with your exam. But for now, I do thank you for listening. Cheers.